here today with Robert Borosage, the co-director of the Campaign for America's Future. Thank you so much for sitting down.
Pleasure.
With us.
Pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about why you came out to Netroots Nation.
Well, the campaign brought about 5 of our bloggers here, so we're part of this community, and we're on a series of panels. Personally, I was on a panel on the Deficit Commission and Social Security and protecting Social Security over the next period, and a panel on what comes next on financial reform. We passed the largest financial reform since the 30s. It was not enough. We've got still a big crisis, both of banks that are too big to fail and of a housing crisis that's crushing people. So we had a panel trying to explore those issues.
Okay, I'd be interested. How do we move forward on those issues?
Well, on the housing stuff, they're going to have to deal with that because they have to look at Freddie and Fannie and how to reorganize the housing market. So that is going to come up in Congress next year. And at the same time, you've got houses across the country. We had 1 million foreclosures this year. We have a failed policy in terms of helping homeowners. In Nevada, 1 out of 2 homes with a mortgage is underwater. So there's a kind of fundamental crisis that still has to be dealt with. So that'll be on the congressional agenda, and it will be in demonstrations across the country at banks, trying to get banks to renegotiate loans and to stop their pretense that the loans are good, so they won't reduce the principal, so they force homeowners eventually into foreclosure. On the broader questions of too big to fail, we've got to have now a period of investigations, of a continued scandal, of prosecutions that create the kindling for reform again. Otherwise, it won't happen. And that's what we were talking about with the Netroots.
Investigations that create the kindling for reform.
In other words, there's a whole range of materials now that are coming out from lawsuits, from congressional hearings, et cetera, that nobody's read, that show how the banks built the bubble, profited from it, and then got the federal government to take their losses. And we've got to keep explaining that to people, revealing specifics, revealing who made out like bandits and who got screwed. And that's the perfect job of the Netroots, to provide that kind of myth-busting and fact exposure. And that keeps people angry at these banks and what they've done, what they've gotten away with. We have the Fed essentially took $4 trillion, that's with a T, and gave it to private financial institutions to cover their losses. We've got to show people, and they're paying themselves $1 million bonuses still. So we've got to show people those facts in great detail again and again and again, keep the anger stoked so that we can get the Congress to go back and do another round of reform.
And what does this issue mean to you personally?
Well, this is one of the fundamental questions about whether we can create an economy that works for people. In the old economy, banks were 40% of corporate profits. And the whole economy was built on bubbles and debt, borrowing $2 billion a year from abroad, et cetera. And the middle class was sinking. And wages were stagnant, and families were forced to go more and more into debt and use their homes as a credit card, et cetera. We can't go back there, which means we have to shrink the financial sector. If we don't succeed in doing that, we're going to go back into an economy that doesn't work.
Okay, and my last question. The largest base of our viewers are grassroots activists, so I always like to ask people I'm talking with, what can our viewers at home do right now to get involved on this issue?
Well, there's a whole range of things you can do. You can move your money out of big banks and put it into your local community banks, which is an incredibly important movement. You can get your organizations to do that, and that will send a message to these banks. You can join organizing in the local community around homeowners and the mortgage crisis, around payday lenders that are charging 450% interest to people that are owned by the big banks, and challenge them in your local communities. And then if you're on the web, if you're part of the Netroots Nation, you can help in this process of investigating and exposing exactly what went down so people can understand it. And it needs a lot of translation. And the translators are going to be invaluable, and it will take citizens around the country to do that.
Okay, well, thank you so much for talking with us.
Pleasure.